I'm Rob Wade. I'm the president of Alternative and Specials at Fox Entertainment. I oversee the network, but I also oversee Fox Alternative Entertainment, which is the studio side of our unscripted business. The biggest show that we are trying to bring back on air at the moment is The Masked Singer, and it's important to us from a network point of view because it's obviously our highest rated show and it's the highest rated show on network television. But it's also produced by FAE, our studio, so it's very important for the revenue of that studio as well. And there's a huge amount of risk in making that show for a number of reasons. One is it has to be filmed in LA because there's so much talent required for it. And when you're booking talent is generally centered around LA. If I were to sort of say, oh, let's move to Atlanta, or even let's do this in England, or other places where there was less cases of COVID, then obviously it'd be impossible to book. Secondly, it's a very expensive show, so it creates a lot of risk. And as you know, there is no insurance really on these shows, and there's no COVID insurance. So that's hugely problematic. And then finally, it's a big production, so it requires a lot of crew members. So you've got something like 450 staff members on that show. And again, just the volume of people means obviously there's a higher risk of someone getting infected, and that's problematic as well. And also it's a very high profile show, so journalists, industry, unions, everyone has got their eyes on it, so it's under a huge amount of scrutiny. So all around, if you had to choose a show to make at the moment, it would be a show that you could put in a bubble outside of LA in a very safe, country or state with very low cases, with a very small crew, and that's going to be the show you want to make because it's safe for the crew. And it provides probably a low cost footprint. So we're also eyeing up what we do with our specials. The New Year's special, which we filmed in front of 1 million people in Times Square, is obviously going to be problematic this year, and we're trying to work out what we're going to do for that. And really anything that requires an audience needs to be looked at. I didn't mention that on Masked Singer as well, but that show is highly dependent on an audience, as I believe are all studio shows. I've had conversations with the LA County and the health offices and the CDC representatives there. And as we go into this filming, obviously scripted and is always considered as the kind of the business that everyone talks about when they're creating guidelines. And what I'm trying to do is make people understand that our audiences in unscripted television are as important as extras in a scripted show because they provide all the context, reaction, emotion that you need to understand as a viewer to make these shows really good. So that is something I'm very, very, very focused on at the moment and trying to solve that. I will go to the supermarket and there are people working there. I go to gas stations, there are people going there. I go and pick up food at takeaway restaurants and there's people working there. There are people that have been working throughout this pandemic and are in a successful way and in a safe way, most importantly. And I think the television industry just has to get that in their minds. It's an incredibly important part of the Californian economy, and we need to figure out how to get back to work safely. I think that you can only live in a Zoom world for so long, and you can only produce in the Zoom world for so long. It is very difficult to make the kind of entertainment shows that we make on broadcast, the kind of scale that people are used to, just using this medium. And we had a huge amount of success. I think we were maybe one of the first networks in maybe in the world to produce in COVID. We did a special, we did an iHeart concert the charity event, and it did very well, both from in terms of raising money, and it did very well in terms of ratings. And it felt like the right thing to do at the time. It felt like something the world needed. We did it because we wanted to prove to people that you could produce. We wanted to prove to people you could make new content, and sort of arrive at some normality in the early weeks of this when people were really, really confused. And we wanted to show there was that hope. And then there's been a lot of similarly produced things, not similar formats, but that have been very good in many cases. But I think at the end of the day, people want to get back to the types of shows that they had before, because it's very limiting. That being said, there may be the drive away from audience shows, because literally you can't have audiences, but the drive away from audience shows in LA may lead to a hit in, as I said, a show that doesn't require celebrity involvement, doesn't require audiences, and can be filmed to a great scale under these conditions. But then again, I'm sitting here in LA, which is a very unique place. I'm speaking to my counterparts in France. They've just filmed Masked Singer with an audience. They've just filmed another show with an audience. They're very kind enough to send me pictures of stuff. It looks like the show because France got it under control. It's reinforced a lot of beliefs of mine. I feel like entertainment television takes us back to a simpler time. I think it's made us realize how good we had it. The last 20 years have been phenomenal time in unscripted television with amazing hits. I think the fact that the news cycle is creates so much noise these days, it's very difficult to create the urgency and loudness that our early unscripted hits had, when everyone was talking about Nasty Nick at the Big Brother house, or Carrie Underwood winning American Idol, or whichever story you want to choose. It's very difficult to break through now and certainly sustain. I feel like we need new hits. I really do. I have a huge amount of respect and love for the older hits, whether it be Dancing with the Stars or The Bachelor or Survivor. These are great TV shows and they deserve the audiences they get. I just wish we had new hits, though, because that's what really gets me excited. And we have to find a way as an industry to start to innovate more, I think, if we want to survive. There are new places for audiences to engage now, like TikTok, and Snapchat and Facebook, and all of the stuff they're engaging with on those platforms is new and fresh. And it's not just young people, it's older people as well, because the older people are being introduced to it by the younger people. And unless we can create new hits and fresh ideas, then the audience will migrate and engage in other places, whether it be gaming or entertainment on these platforms. So that's my focus, and the pandemic has helped accelerate a lot of these issues. I mean, I think anyone who doesn't see that is denying something that's plainly obvious to me. You're talking about somewhere in the region of 230, 240 million people who are left inside, who will otherwise go. And I think the ratings went up from where they were averaging, don't quote me on these exact ratings, but let's say it's like a 0.3. And I think we started to see 0.6 and 0.7. So you're talking about an extra couple of million people, maybe not even that, maybe more like 1 million people watching these shows. And everyone's like, well, look at this, people are locked in and the ratings are increases. And I was like, hold on a second. There's 250 million people stuck in their houses and they can't do anything. They can't go out to dinner. They can't go to barbecues. They can't see their friends. They can't. And yet we are still only pulling in that many more people. Well, what are they doing? And I think that's the question we have to ask ourselves. And how do we create urgencies and capture those audiences now? First of all, I feel very optimistic about the future. I feel like there is going to be an adjustment, but I worked at Psycho Television, which is obviously part of Sony, and so I was quite close to the music industry for many years, um, and had a lot of colleagues who were going through essentially the ginormous changes in the music industries around the first decade of the first 2008 through to 2013. It was all changing, and the music industry was really in turmoil. It didn't know what it was doing. It didn't know how to, suddenly there was Napster and these streaming services, and people were just leaving. But what became super, super clear is that whether you are, what became super clear was that it was about the content. It was about, yes, maybe you couldn't sell albums, but you could sell singles. But you could still sell albums if they were really good as well. And slowly but surely, the business started to change, and there was the value of that content and the value of touring and the value of merchandising, all these different things tied together. And so, that's a good example, by the way. So if you look at music, like, it was always pretty simple. It was like the record label would say, okay, we're going to put up a load of money for you, and then we're going to take all the profits from your sales, right? And then everything else you can worry about. But during that time, the record labels were like, well, hold on a second, we're not going to make enough money out of that. So they started to do the 360 deals, which were like, we're going to take money from your merch, we're going to take money from your touring as well, because we're not making enough out of selling, because you're not selling albums, you're selling singles, which is good, but we're still not seeing our return. So I think that's a really good metaphor for the TV industry. I think moving forward, the people who are putting up the money, like me, are going to have to find ways to earn money in a more fragmented television environment, perhaps where viewing is lower, ad revenue might get lower, etc. So we are going to have to look at the business side of that. But I still think it's going to be very profitable for everyone involved. We just have to have a slight adjustment in how we look at these things. And I think if you believe in content, which I believe in content, if you are making it something that's entertaining and something that's good, you are going to find ways to make money, and you're going to find ways to get an audience. And so that's where you have to silence a lot of noise at the moment, and you have to try and focus on that one goal. And realize we are in a time of change and adaptation, and realize that the winds will die down and the waves will die down. And as long as you're keeping that focus and you can keep that core piece of your business alive, you're going to be okay. So I started this thought earlier, but you take a show, you take any industry like streamer, you take a streamer, you take Peacock, Netflix, HBO Max, or you take a cable channel, or you take a network, or you take, some degree TikTok, or the social media platforms are slightly different. They all live and die on their content as well. Like, they may be media, you may look at, well, those are streamers and they're different, but really when it comes down to it, people are going to come to places where the content's good.